Smells like a Mini. It looks like a Mini, but does it taste like a Mini? I don't know what the first Mini tasted like, but I'll say it. I think I chipped the tooth. Shit.
There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down soon. They sing on a sleepless night. Try to catch me howling at the moon.
All right, so the original Mini was probably one of DJI's best selling drones on the market. It appealed to beginners and it appealed to people that were already in the hobby for a while. Why? Because it came in at 249 grams and a relatively affordable cost point. The Mini 1 was so successful that DJI followed it up with the Mini 2, and they added in 4K capability and raw photo capability. How do you make something that is so successful even more successful? Well, replicate it and rip out a lot of features and make the price almost unavoidable. At $299, the Mini SE is the best beginner drone on the market today. That's right, I said it's the best beginner drone on the market today for the price. At $299, this is gonna be hard to beat. In today's video, I wanna gear it directly towards beginners and not my existing audience, because I know my existing audience has things like the Mavic, the Evo, things like that. And even though you aren't a beginner, you may wanna still consider something like this for certain situations. All right, let's get started with the video. And let's start off with the overall specifications. So what do we have here? What's improved or what's stayed the same? Well, essentially the design, it's the same as the Mini. It's the same as the Mini 2. However, we do have the Mini 2's airframe, which allows us to have a higher wind resistance. The Mini 1 was never really that good in the wind, and the Mini 2 is not much better, but the airframe does make it a little bit more rigid. And we have that same frame here in this particular build. As far as the camera goes, we're getting up to 2.7K. We're not getting any 60 frames per second. A little bit of a bummer, but hey, you know what? At $299, who am I to gripe? No raw photo capability, so you just have JPEG. But again, if you're a beginner, you're probably not gonna be somebody that's gonna be really pushing raw files around all that much. So I don't think that's gonna be a huge loss to you. You're not getting any of the fancy flight mode features like Follow Me because it doesn't have obstacle avoidance. But again, not a big deal. It's a small enough drone. It should be able to avoid a lot of obstacles. Flight time, you're getting 30 minutes of flight time, which I still think for something this size is pretty damn impressive. I had the DJI Spark, and I remember when we used to have to battle with 12 minutes of flight time on a drone a little bit larger than this. So it's super impressive to see them include 30 minutes of flight time with the Mini SE at $299. Now, why is this so cheap? Well, there could be a couple of different theories to it. One, these aren't all that expensive to manufacture. It's really plasticky and it feels relatively cheap in comparison to some of other DJI drones. It also seemingly lacks some of the advanced sensors that the other drones do have. Now, does that affect the performance overall? No, not really, but it is something worth noting. It does just have optical flow sensors instead of full cameras at the bottom. There is one tiny one that can hold its position, but it's not all that impressive and it's not gonna work the same capacity as an Air 2S or even an Air 2. So keep that in mind. All in all, I think that this was a needed drone. I think we needed something in that sub $400, sub $300 range, and at $299 it does compete. And if it's already priced at $299, that also means there's a potential at some point for this to reduce in price. Now, what I think is happening here is DJI has a plethora of Mavic Mini parts left over, and this is their way of expelling those parts, creating the SE, which is basically like a special edition, and you know, see where it goes and see where it sells. But that's not a bad thing because at $299, this is almost a disposable drone. If you lost this on a trip, you're probably not gonna be really distraught over this. Now, I've lost several expensive drones over a couple of different trips that I've been on, And I left that trip feeling like just depleted and absolutely upset. But with this, you lose $299. You're not going to be all that upset. So keep that in mind. Number two, if you decide you're going to take this on a trip and fly into a country where you don't fully understand the drone laws, remember that at the airport, a lot of times they will look through your bags and they're going to confiscate these drones, and you're not going to get it back in most situations. A lot of times you're not going to get a drone back. Rick from Drone Valley once told me a story about how he flew into, I think it was the Philippines, or I forgot where he was at, but he was overseas somewhere. He flew into the country with his Mavic Air and they didn't say anything. But when he went to go leave the Philippines, was it the Philippines? I want to say it was the Philippines. I'm not 100% sure on that. Don't quote me really on that. But anyways, the country he was leaving, they wouldn't let him take his drone. So he had to leave his Air behind, which that's a huge bummer. He did get a chance to take his SD card, but if I had to leave this behind, it's almost like a disposable camera at that point. Also, as a beginner, you'll be happy to know that this is really quite durable. It's actually pretty damn hard to break the Mini. Even as cheap as it feels, it sort of just bounces off of things. Now, the gimbal is probably the most fragile piece of this drone, but it is actually pretty well protected underneath the shell of here. So again, as a beginner, if you smack into something, you're probably going to be just fine. Now, there is no OcuSync in this drone. So just like the original Mini, you're going to have to deal with Wi-Fi. Now, if you're here in the United States and we're dealing with FCC guidelines, you're going to get 5.8, which gives you up to about 30 dBm. So you're going to get the better half of the signal here, as to where if you were overseas in Europe or something, a lot of times they do have some problems with connectivity, but I haven't really experienced anything show-stopping. Now, with that being said, if you are in an urban environment, you are going to notice some interference and you're gonna have to really pay attention to your signal. I don't suggest setting the signal manually, but I do suggest setting it in automatic. But otherwise, this performed just as well as the previous Mini. Yeah. So I don't want to make this a long video because it is just a Mini, but there you go. I think that this is going to appeal to a lot of beginners, and it's going to be the perfect disposable drone should you need to take it somewhere where there's the risk of you losing it, or maybe you just want to get a really cool shot and you don't want to risk your Mavic or Air 2S. For $299, you really can't feel too bad about that, and the fact that it's pretty damn durable. All right, that's going to do it for today's video. If you enjoyed, be sure to hit the subscribe button, like the video, because this is now my full-time job. I quit my job last week, or actually, well, it depends on when you watch this. I'm unemployed. So hit the subscribe button and tell me that this was a good idea, because God damn it, I'm scared. I'll see you next time. Stay original.